Good morning, creators, and welcome to another UEFN tutorial. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to create a voting UI system for your maps that looks like this, where you can randomize options, show votes, have a duration, and just manage multiple systems per player. It's a great system that's it's very modular and also very easy to edit. Before we begin, all of this code is linked in the description. So if you want to avoid the ginormous timestamp below, my feelings won't be hurt. You can copy that below. Now there are a few things you need to change if you're just going to straight copy it, and those are marked right up here. We have this enumeration, which is just basically names for the things that you're voting for. So if you have like assault rifle, you put AR. And then down here in your toTexture node, you need to bind that to a texture. So AR would point to textures, maybe not textures, but this represents the folder that your asset is stored in. So if you had a folder named folder, then you would access the name of that texture. So if the texture is named texture, then that would access it. Obviously, I don't have a named folder, nor do I have a named texture, so it's giving me an error. But in this case, I had a folder named textures with a texture named orange vote. And you can see that here, textures folder, and then my textures are here. So that's all you need to change. And of course, you can initialize your device as such. And that should be all you need. But for those of you who are sticking through and watching the video, congratulations. Y'all are amazing. And let's get into it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is open up the Verse Explorer. We're going to right click on our project name and add a verse file to project. We're going to name this device the voting UI device and create. And that should pop up there. We're going to open it up in Verse. All right, so in here, we're going to set up our device first, which is going to have a method to start and end the voting, which will be the start voting trigger, which of course is of type trigger device. Go ahead and copy this and paste it below, and we're going to rename this to the end voting trigger. So these start/end the voting. All right, the next thing we're going to have is a duration for the voting. So we'll call this duration. And this is going to be an optional float. I'll go ahead and set that to false. And what this means is if false, just waits for the end vote trigger. But if there's a value, it will end after that duration. All right. We're also going to have a num to pick, which is going to be an integer. Go ahead and set that to 1. This is editable. And this is the number of voting candidates to pick when voting. And paired with that, we're going to have a randomize option. So editable randomize, which is going to be a logic. Set that to false. And this is just going to randomize the objects that you've picked. So it'll randomize the objects, and then it'll pick the first, in this case, only the first element. If you had 3 here, it'll pick the first 3 elements after you randomize, if that's set to true. All right. The next thing we have is the show vote count. And so this is a UI setting. So we'll have editable show vote counts, which is going to be a logic. So if true, shows the vote count in the UI. So if you don't want players to cheat, don't show the vote count. If you want them to see the votes, then you can set that to true. All right. We also need candidates. So we're going to create a class called voting candidate. This will be a class that is concrete meaning we can have editables in it. So at editable, inside of this class, we want to have a title representing our candidate. So this will be a string. I'll set that to nothing for now. We also want to have a description, which will also be a string, and set that to nothing for now. And we want a completed event, which is going to be a trigger. For now, it's just a trigger. That's going to say once this voting candidate is elected, this trigger device is going to activate. All right, one thing we are missing is an identifier for what kind of voting candidate this is. So up here at the top, since this is going to be something that people will have to modify, we're going to create a candidate enum. This is going to be a numerator, which means it's a list of names that you can associate with values. These are the things that you're going to be voting on. So we'll call this things you are voting on. And inside of your candidate enum, you want to have, I'm going to add oranges, coconuts, and bananas. And now that we have these, we can add them to our device. So up here, we're going to have the candidates. And we'll make these an editable candidates array, which will be of course of type voting candidate. Voting candidate. And set that to an array. And you can set that in your device. All right. So now we need to create some methods in our UI device that will handle our voting. So the first thing we want to do is in our onBegin, do a start voting trigger dot triggered events dot subscribe start voting. And same thing for the end voting trigger, but we'll say end voting. Like so. And we need to define those functions, of course. We'll have start voting. Triggers pass an optional agent, so we're just going to say that. We'll say m agent of type optional agent. Return void for now, and we'll just put return so it removes the error. End voting, which return, of course, has an optional agent. Returns nothing, and then just put a return so we remove the error. All right, so now the code's just saying we're going to start voting, we're going to end voting based off of these triggers. I hit something. Just change that. All right, we're good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some maps so we can track player data within this device. So we're going to have a player UI map, which is going to be of type player. And for now, we're just going to set void because we don't have a UI. But we're going to change that in a second. So we'll set that to equal map. And we're also going to have player choice map, which is going to have player as a key and integer as the value, which is just what they have chosen as their vote. All right, pretty simple. In our end voting function, it's very simple. Very, very simple. All you need is tally votes, pick winner, tiebreak if necessary. And then we need to clear data for future use. So let's start off with clearing data. That's very simple. We're just going to set player UI map equal to map. And we need to set player choice map equal to map. And this is just going to delete all of the maps data. But one thing we do need to do is remove the player UI before we remove the map. So remove player UI from their screen. That's something we will have to go back and do once we have that UI in. Pick the winner. We're gonna have to tie break if necessary. That's part of the tally vote. So we're just gonna combine that into a function we call tally votes, like so. Tally votes will tally the votes and then execute the winning class. So we'll say tally votes. It'll return void. And we're just going to go through the player choices and add them up. So we're going to have a variable, votes, or we'll call this the ballot. And this is going to be a map as well. So integer mapping to integer. And I know that might be confusing, so let me quickly define the key, which is within the square brackets, is the candidate. Actually, we can simplify this further. Voting candidate. Not voting candidate. Candidate enum. We'll use that. It makes it a little bit simpler. In fact, we will change that up here. Candidate enum. So now the player choice stores the candidate enum value, and then that is stored in the ballot. So it's a little bit more, it makes more sense from a programmer standpoint. So the key is a candidate. That's integer is num votes. And so you're just going to go through the player choice map. So for key, I see you don't really need the key. For candidates in player choice map, we're going to set ballot at candidate plus equal to 1. We'll put that in if statement because it's conditional. So basically every time a candidate is found in a player's vote, it's going to add that to the map. And then once that's done, we'll start tie breaking. So the first step was just tallying. Now we need to actually figure out who wins. So for each candidate in the ballot, so we'll have candidate points to num votes in ballot. And so we'll have var highest votes of type int, set that equal to 0, actually -1, makes a little bit more sense. And we'll have a variable winners, because there could be multiple, it could be tied. And this will be an array of candidate enums. So array, like so. So for candidate in num votes per ballot, we're going to do if num votes is greater than highest votes, then we're going to completely replace the array and the highest votes. So we're going to set highest votes equal to num votes, and we're going to set winners equal to array with candidate. Now, else if num votes is equal to highest votes, we're going to set winners plus equal to array candidate, meaning that there is a tie found. So we'll say tie. Up here is new winner. And if it's less, then we just ignore them because they did not win. Now, finally, we need to pick a winner. And that's really the ultimate goal. So if there is an issue I'm thinking about, so I'm just going to write down a note here. What about when no votes have been submitted? And because of that, just so I don't forget, up here we're going to add a variable active candidates, and this is based off of the randomization. And this will just be an array of candidate enum, and that's going to be an array. So if there have been no votes submitted, that means we need a tie break with the 0 votes between all the candidates. So if winners dot length is equal to 0, we need a tie break between those selected candidates. So we're going to need a randomization function. So we're going to add the verse.org/random library /random. And what we have in here is randomize between the active candidates. So if winner is shuffle active candidates, and then we'll have square brackets 0, meaning the first winner out of a shuffled array, then winner dot completed events dot trigger. Well, actually, we have to get that from the our candidates up here. So for actually, let's just have a winner up here. So for winner of type optional voting, sorry, I keep messing this up, candidate enum is equal to false. Right now, there's no winner selected. So we'll say this is the found winner, then set winner equal to option found winner. Else if, so this is just the normal instance when there is more winners, or that there have been multiple winners selected. So if, I guess we just do this. So else if found winner is equal to shuffle winners, which is the one up here, this winners, at 0, then set winner equal to option found winner. So now we have selected a winner. If we haven't, then there is some sort of errors. We'll have an else statement here. Print error failed to select winner. In fact, we'll add this down here because we're going to have to do a check. So if true winner is equal to winner, since it's optional, we have to grab that. Else, we're going to print our statement here that there was some sort of error occurred. Either there were no active candidates chosen, or no one voted and for some reason it failed, or there could be an issue. So we'll have a print statement for that. So within true winner, now we've got to find the winning candidate out of our candidates up here. So for candidates in candidates, we're going to do if candidate dot we need to have a candidate down here, candidate enum, and we'll set it to the basic. The first ones are oranges. That way we have a candidate associated with our class. So now we can actually do a comparison here. So if candidate dot candidate, which is just for clarity purposes, we'll call this candidate class. If candidate class, which is this, dot candidate, which is this inner enumeration here, is equal to true winner, that means we found our winner, and thus we are going to return because we're done. And we also need to apply the function. So candidate class dot completed event dot trigger. And like that, you have triggered your event, you have tallied the votes, and now you'll return back to your end voting, which will clear your maps, and it will need to remove the UI, of course. All right, so at this point in the video, I want to work on the logic, the concurrency logic for handling the voting. So when we start the voting, we want to spawn a process that's going to handle either the duration or the end voting trigger. So we'll have spawn handle start in parentheses. And so we're going to make that a suspended function down here. Actually, we'll just do it below here for organizational purposes. Handle start is going to be a suspended function. It'll return nothing. And we'll just have return for now. So when you start this voting, you want to add UIs to players. You want to then wait for duration or for the trigger. And so what we're going to do is if true duration is equal to duration, basically saying that we found a duration, somebody has put in a duration for the wait, then we are going to do a race statement, and that's going to race for sleep true duration and for the end voting trigger. So end voting trigger dot triggered event dot await. So wait on the end voting trigger before doing anything else. Else, we just need to wait on the end voting trigger. So meaning that there has been no duration input. So we just wait on the end voting trigger. Triggered events dot await. All right. Once that's done, we're going to call the end voting function. And since we've basically unbound this from the end voting trigger subscription up here, we'll remove that, and then we'll remove this content here because we don't need it. So we'll have end voting call. So simply, it's just going to wait for the end voting condition, and then it's going to end vote. End voting. All right, last thing we need to do in our start voting function is to handle the actual picking of candidates. So first thing we're going to do is get the whole list of candidates. So all candidates, there's going to be an array, candidate enum is going to be 4, and we're going to use our candidates as a reference. C in candidates, we'll do C c.candidate, like so. And then we're going to actually set our active candidates here. So if randomize, we're going to make a array that we can use. So it will do shuffle all candidates. And then we need to slice this, meaning we get a certain set of components. So we'll slice from 0 to num to pick -1, which will currently pick 3 from 0 to index 2. Since this is a decides function, we'll use an if block here. If randomize and shuffle, then we will set active candidates equal to, we'll call this new candidates. New candidates. Else, we'll do else if new candidates is equal to all candidates dot slice 0 num to pick -1. then set active candidates equal to new candidates, else print error failed to generate candidates, and then we want to return because there was an error. Basically saying that if you want to randomize these, it will shuffle them and then pick the first X of them. Otherwise, it'll just pick the first X of them based off of num pick. And if that fails, if both of those fail, then it will print an error and return. So you'll know that something is wrong and you can cry about it. Now that seems to be all the logic we need. We just need to work on the UI now. So let's head over to the engine. As always, it's really good to plan out your UIs in the UMG editor. So we're gonna go into our content browser, scroll down, find user interface, hit widget blueprint. Just pick a user widget. It'll name this the voting UI. And so in here is where we're going to design our UI. So we're going to add a canvas. There it is. Canvas panel, so we can place things freely. We're going to have a text block, and this text block is going to tell us what we're voting for and how much time we have. So we'll say vote 30 seconds as a basic example. And we're also going to have a button down here that says submit, which clearly will submit whatever you've picked. We'll say submit. Go ahead and expand that. And so the alignment on these probably need to be centered on the page. So we're going to select our anchors. Just go ahead and center them. And I'm going to pull my anchors down where I want the widget centered. So I probably want it a little bit higher up. And now I'm going to set the alignment to 0.5, 0.5. And the position size should both be 0, like this. And finally, you want to have size to content set to true. Oh, I said 0.5, like that. So that will center it. Do the same thing for the vote text block. Size of content, set all of these to 0. Move your anchors. Move it to where you want it to be. And set these to 0. And you want the alignment to be 0.5, 0.5 so that it is centered around that anchor. That looks good, and it looks like it might be slightly offset. So yeah, 0.5, 0.5. Yeah, double check, make sure these are centered properly. And obviously right now, there's no voting candidates on your screen. So we gotta do something about that. We're just gonna create a basic overlay class to handle this. So I'll have an overlay. I'm gonna have an image in the background. We're gonna set the horizontal and vertical alignments to fill. And we're gonna set this color to, let's do black. I'm gonna have another image, and we're gonna set these horizontal alignments to fill as well. But we're gonna add some padding so that it lets us see the background color. So we'll do like 20, and then we'll set this color to a dark blue, like so. So that gives you something to work with, but it's not everything we need yet. We need a stack box to contain the contents inside. So that's gonna be a stack box. And what do we want in our stack box? We probably want a texture representing what we're voting on. So let's set the stack box to vertical. We want an image representing what we're voting on, so we'll set that to like 150 by 150. That seems like a decent size. We're gonna add a text block in here. Go ahead and center it, and this will be the title of what you're voting on. And then we're gonna make another text block below it, and this will be the description. Like so. And you might want to add some padding above it just to give it some space between it and the title, maybe like 10. And you can center the description if you want. It's up to you. And the last thing we need is a button to vote for. So we'll put the button down here, and we'll say this vote, and then have a colon with a 1 representing the number of votes, or 0. So vote 0. And I want a little bit of spacing between this and the description. So in the padding, I'm going to add 10 to the top, like so. Maybe a little bit more. We'll do 20. That looks pretty good to me. In fact, I want to probably decrease this a little bit. That looks pretty evenly balanced. So now we're going to take this stack box and put it in our overlay, which you can do on the left side here. Center these. And then you can use padding to drive the size, but it's virtually already good. In fact, I think we should use the padding. So let's fill. And then we're going to set the padding. So we'll do 20. So it matches the padding of our color here. And that way they are uniform. If you want to add a little bit more padding, I think that would be good too. So we'll do like 25. So that way it feels a little bit nicer. Now that we have all the elements of our UI, you can just copy and paste side by side, like so. Yeah, they're a little bit ununiform, but it's okay. We'll use a stack box to align these, which we will define in our verse. All right, before we move forward, let's make sure that we upload our images that we'll be using in our UI. So in here, I have a folder called textures. Inside of here, I have my voting textures here. Now, a thing to note about this is you can only have your textures within one subfolder. Otherwise, Verse cannot access it. So if you have a folder right here, this folder doesn't work. If you have any textures within here, Verse will not be able to access that. That's an oversight on the devs end. I don't know if they're going to fix it. So just keep everything within a top level folder. So if you were in your contents right here, this is a folder that would work. So anything within this folder can be viewed, but anything within this folder doesn't work. So make sure it's just within one folder. All right, so once that's done, you're going to want to go ahead and build verse code. And that's going to generate your assets folder, which will allow you to access your textures in Verse. So let's open back Verse. And now we're going to create a function to convert our candidate enum into a texture. So we'll call this CE of type candidate enum dot to texture. And this will return a texture. And so this is going to take a case, CE. And then we're going to have candidate enum dot oranges. We'll have a equal sign and then an arrow, meaning that it's mapped to textures dot orange vote, I think is what it's called. Yeah, orange vote. Up here, we're going to have to add the assets folder. So verse.org/random, not random, assets. We need the candidate enum.coconuts, which is going to be textures.coconut vote. And then the last one is bananas. So textures.banana and vote. So once you have given a texture to each of these candidates, all the errors will go away. And now it will just return a texture that maps to whatever candidate you've given. All right, so now we just have to start the UI components. We have two UI components to worry about. That is the voting UI. We're going to call that a class, simple class. We have the voting, call it the candidate widget. And this will be a class. So this handles individual candidates, and then this handles the entire UI menu, like so. All right, starting from the candidate widget, we are going to have a associated candidate. We'll call this active candidate. Type candidate enum. We'll have nothing associated with that. We'll set that in a constructor function. We're also going to have some widgets associated with this. That's going to be our call it the border color block, which is going to be a color block. We need to add the UI libraries. So unrealengine.com/temporary/UI. And another one, spatial math. And then we need fortnite.com/UI so we can access the buttons. All right. So down here, we have our border color block. We have our inner color block, which is the blue. We have the texture block, which is just a texture block. We have the title block, which is a text block. We also have a description block, which is also a text block. In fact, we'll short this down to desk block. Desk standing for description, of course. And then we need the vote button, which can be a button allowed. Very obvious button. Now we need a function to create the widget. So we'll call this init. Set that to void. And up here, we're going to have a widget that we can set. So we'll have var widget of type widgets is equal to, we'll just do color block. Color block just being a basic widget in case this fails, but it shouldn't because you will code it right. So init, we're going to set widget equal to an overlay. Of course, in the background of this overlay, we're going to have slots, which is an array. We're going to have our overlay slots, which will have our border color block with horizontal alignments set to horizontal alignments dot fill. Vertical alignments set to vertical alignments dot fill. Widgets set equal to that. My bad. Sorry, I have a system I'm using in one of my maps that simplifies UIs, but I am not sharing it for the purpose of making this able to be like really simple to copy and paste. So I'm just using the standard UI. So if it get tripped up, that's why. Overlay slots. We're gonna have another one, which is going to be our inner color block. Horizontal alignment. And we'll just copy from here. We also need margins. So I think they call it padding here. This is going to be a margin with top equal to. We'll just define it up here for simplicity's sake. Say inner padding of type floats. We set it to 20 in our blueprint. So we'll do inner padding. Bottom is inner padding. And left is inner padding. And right is inner padding, like so. All right, and then we have one more overlay slot, which is going to be the all the stack stuff in the center. Overlay slots. Similar situation here. Select all of these, copy, paste. Going to replace inner padding with center padding. We set this to 25 in ours. And so I'm just going to do Control F so I can replace this. I'm going to search for inner padding and replace it with center padding. And so go to the first instance that you want to replace. It'll be highlighted on the screen. And you can just hit replace, 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 replace. And that will fix your issues. The last thing we got to do is create our widget. So I'm going to create it down here. It'll be widget is a stack box. Stack box has an orientation. So our orientation is going to be vertical. And we're going to have slots in this stack box, of course. So this will be an array. Stack box slot widget. First widget is going to be our texture. So texture block. Stack box slot widget is our title block. Another one. Widget is our description block. And the last stack box slot will be dedicated to our button, vote button. And now we need to set our padding and alignments within these stack box slots. I know it's a lot. That's just how Verse UI is. So we're going to set this to center for our texture. And I don't think I need any padding. So I'll just ignore the padding for now. All right. And then I need some for my title block, also centered on my description block. And I want the vote button to fill just because that's just how I prefer it. And we should add a little bit of padding to these texts so that it separates it from the texture and from each other. So padding is going to be margin. Do top is, what do we say in our blueprints? Let me see. Voting UI. I said no padding there, but 5 for that. I'm going to say 5 here as well. That looks good to me. So 5 padding here. And then 5 padding there. And that should, gosh. We're going to set 5 padding here on the top. And 5 padding below. I think I wanted 10 padding for the vote button. Just to give it some good space. And so that creates our widget. That's our init function. So it's feeling good. Now we need to communicate with our voting UI whenever this button is pressed. So we're going to handle that in our voting UI. So inside of here, we need a few widgets. The first thing we're going to have is the prompt text block, which should be a text block. We're going to have a submit button, which is a button allowed. And then we also want to have our candidate widgets. So candidate widgets, which is going to be an array of candidate widget. And so these are the things that we have on our voting UI. Very, very simple. We're also going to have an init function in here, return void. And we also want a variable widget here so we can access that data. Variable widget of type widget, and set the color block just as a basic basic widget. So we're going to set widgets equal to canvas. And you can mess around with this canvas to align things however you want, but we're just gonna make an array. And I'm gonna set up how I want. So canvas slot widgets is the prompt text block. Alignment is a vector2, where x is 0.5 and y is 0.5. Anchors are anchors, where the minimum is a vector2, where x is certainly 0.5, but y is going to be some different value for each of these. So we'll do 0.1 to be at the top, and we'll just go ahead and copy that because we want uniform anchors. I'll do maximum set to that. All right. And then we need size to content true. So it will size these widgets. All right, I'm going to paste that, select, and then shift tab to reduce that indentation. This is going to be our stack of candidate widgets. So I want this to be centered on the screen, so we'll have 0.5 on the Y. I'm going to make one last one here, shift tab, and this is going to be our submit button. We're going to have this down at the bottom, so we'll do this like 0.9 on the Y. Now we need to set up our stack of candidate widgets. So make this a stack box. Our orientation is going to be a orientation dot vertical, like so. And the next thing we're going to do is create our slots. So slots is equal to array. And instead of using this array, we're just going to do for CW in candidate widgets. We're going to create a slot. Stack box slot. So for, we're going to add a dot there and then stack box slots. Our widget is going to be cw.widget. We want it to be centered, so we're going to have horizontal and vertical center. Just copy this down here. Go back here, paste it in. Centered alignment, and we want a little bit of padding between the widgets. So we'll do margin. And since this is horizontal, we don't really need vertical, or we don't need vertical padding. So we'll just do left is, let's do like 50. And we can adjust this if we want. But that should be sufficient padding. And so that's everything you need from these UI declarations. All right, so we're going to need to communicate between these UIs and the device up here. So we're going to create a event, which is going to communicate information. So we're going to call this the candidate selection event, which is an event. So that's going to pass a candidate enum. Set that equal to events. I'll just copy this like so. We're actually going to pass this into our candidate widget. So actually, let's not set that here. Let's just have it empty. We're going to pass it into our candidate widget so it can also access that once it activates. So candidate selection events. In our init function, we want to handle when the vote button is pressed. So at the bottom here, make sure it's aligned there. We're going to spawn handle button. And down here, we're going to define it. So handle button is a suspended function, return void. And then we're just going to race. We need a kill event so that this race will end and we don't have any memory leakage. We're just going to call this the kill event. Just nothing in that kill event. This kills the event when it's no longer needed. It's useful. You don't need to understand it, but it will reduce memory leakages, which is good and it's necessary. So our race is going to be kill events dot await, and then we are going to loop vote button dot on click dot await, and then we're going to have the candidate selection event dot signal with our candidate, which is up here, active candidate. All right. That's all we need from the candidate widget, I believe. So up in here, we're also going to add a kill event, which is going to be an event, just like the one below. And we also need a handle selection event. Return void. It's also suspended. And we're going to race kill events dot await loop candidate selection event dot await, and then we're going to grab the candidate from this selection event. So candidate is equal to candidate selection event dot wait. Basically here, all we're going to do is edit the UI whenever this selection gets chosen. So up here, I'm going to have just a variable, so I can simply access. Actually, no, I think we're good. So we'll get that. One thing I wanted to do with this UI, if we just go back here, is have some sort of indication as to what the player is currently voting for. Because right now, there's not really an indication. We want it to be reactive, so the players know what's going on. So we're gonna use the tint of this border color block, and let's turn it like yellow when it's selected, so it pops. We know that's selected, very clearly selected between these two objects that are have a black background. So that's basically what we want to do. Is go for CW in candidate widgets. We're just going to highlight the one that got selected and turn the other ones to black. So if active candidate is equal to candidate, meaning this is currently selected, this is cw.activeCandidate. Then we're going to do cw. What's it called? Border color block dot set color. And our color here is going to be, we're going to define it down here. We'll have unselected color, div type color. We'll do R is equal to, I think we can just go with that because we want black. And then we want selected color, which is a color which should be R as 1.0 and G as 1.0. So red and green, both full. So selected color here, else it wants to be deselected, so border color block dot set color, unselected color. We got to add the colors library up here so we can access colors. So first.org/colors. Like so. All right, so now whenever a candidate is selected, it will appear on here. All right, so now we have to handle some things in our device relating to these UIs. The first thing I want to do is handle the killing of UIs. So we're going to do for UI in player UI map. Now we can actually set this value up here from void to our voting UI. So now that we've gotten our UI in our player map, first we want to do is call the kill event. kill event.signal, and then we want to remove it from the player. So we'll grab the player from the map itself using this. We're going to do if player is equal to player UI is equal to get player UI at player. Then player UI dot remove widget UI dot widget. All right. So now it's going to remove and kill UIs per player. And we can go ahead and set our player UI map right after that, since we no longer have those in use. So we just remove the UIs from their screen. And I think that's everything we need from the end voting function. But start voting, you're going to have to create the UIs, assign the UIs, and create a process for handling the clock, and the interactions and everything. So we're going to call new UI. And actually, here's where we can break off and create a constructor function for our UI elements. So I'm going to create a constructor for candidate widget. So make candidate widget. This is going to take a kill event. It's going to take a candidate selection event, which has candidate enum. It's also going to take, in fact, we're just going to shorten this down for my purposes, CSE, so I can actually see. Active candidate, so we'll say candidate, type candidate enum. I think that's everything we need, but I might get corrected by the code. And this will return a candidate widget. And so what this is going to do is new candidate widget is a candidate widget. Active candidate is candidate. Kill events is kill event. Candidate selection event. Selection event is CSE. And we got to set the widgets as well. So border color block is color block with default color equal to unselected color. The inner color block is a color block with default color. It was a dark blue. So we'll do color. R is, we'll just do blue. So blue is, do like 0.7. So it's a little bit darker blue. Texture block is going to be a texture block. Default image is going to be candidate.toTexture. And default desired size is going to be a vector2 with x as 150 and y as 150 as well. We need a title block. Should be a text block. Default text. Oh yeah, we do need more stuff here. So how about we pass the actual voting candidate class here? So we'll call it voting candidates. And we can access members from that. So candidate.candidate. Default text is, we have not initialized an s2m function yet, so I got to create that here. S2m localizes string, and this is just going to convert a string to a message, so we can use it in our UIs. S like that. Now we can use s2m with candidate dot title. And I do have this already defined in a different function, so let me delete it from the passcode tutorial, which you can find on my channel. It's a tutorial before this one. We have the description block, which is also a text block with the candidate description. And the vote button is just going to be button loud with default text equal to S2M of vote. Like so. This was supposed to be an event. That should work. And what other errors we have? Oh yeah, this is the wrong formatting. That's the proper formatting, right? Nope, that was the right formatting. Oh yeah, candidate.candidate, because I'm using the voting candidate class now. So that should be everything initialized. Now we got to do the same thing for the voting UI. So we're going to make a constructor, make voting UI. So we'll say active candidates of type array candidates voting candidate. It's the name of the class. What else do we need? I think that's about it. Maybe we pass the actually no, we don't need to do that. So make a new voting. Actually, I did forget, sorry. I did forget we need to init this this candidate widget. So new candidate widget dot init and then return new candidate widget. That's the proper formatting. New voting UI, same situation. Instead of void, it should be returning voting UI. It's voting UI. It's going to ask for everything that it needs. Same situation, got to init it and then return new voting UI. So to initialize, we need our prompt text block. It's going to be a text block. Default text is going to be S2M of vote. We also want a array of candidate widgets, which we'll define in a second. Submit button, just a button loud with default text as S2M of submit. And then we have the kill events. We're going to create a kill event up here. What type of events? Equal to event like that. And we also need the candidate selection event. We'll call it selection events, which is events, candidate widget, candidate enum, candidate enum. Copy that so I don't have to type it out again. And add the curly brackets. So kill event is equal to kill event. And candidate selection event is selection event. Now we need to set up our candidate widgets. So we're going to do for AC and active candidates. We're going to create, we're going to use the make candidate widget function. So make candidate widget with kill events, selection events, and AC.candidate. Actually, we needed the whole thing, so candidate. Just AC. All right. So that should create all those elements, and then it should use the init function to create the widget itself. And then we can go back into our device and use that to assign to the player. So we're going to get active players. We're going to do for player in get play space dot get players. All right, so we have to use the make voting UI function, which is going to ask for some it's going to ask for an array of candidates of the actual class. So we need to construct that class first. We'll do for AC and active candidates. Make a variable class array, which is going to be a voting candidate array. We're going to go for AC and active candidates, and then we're going to do for seat and candidates if c.candidate is equal to AC, and we're going to set class array plus equal to array AC. Array C, I mean. So that's going to build that UI with our reference. And then we can go ahead and add that to our voting UI. So we'll have a class array here. Now we have our new voting UI. We're going to want to add that to our map here. So if set player UI map equal to, well, at the index of player, of course, equal to new voting UI. We also want to set, we want to add it to our screen. So if player UI is equal to get player UI for player. Then we want to do player UI dot add widget, new voting UI dot widget, and then we need the player UI slot. Input mode is UI input mode dot all, meaning that it will be interactive and not just a passive UI, so they can press buttons. We also want to spawn methods to update this UI. So spawn update UI. We'll start off with that and just use the new voting UI. Actually, we'll call this handle UI because there's going to be multiple things handled here. New voting UI, we're also going to pass the player itself. And down here, we're going to find the handle UI function. Handle UI, player of type player. New voting UI. Or just call it vote UI, type voting UI. And this will return nothing. It'll be suspended because we're going to call multiple method. And basically here, we're going to do a race with a kill event. So we're going to add a done voting event down here. Done voting, which is an event. So when we're done voting, it will kill. Dot await. Go ahead when we're done voting. After this race, we'll do vote UI dot kill event. Dot await, and we'll also go ahead and remove this from the player UI. So if player UI is equal to get player UI for player, then player UI remove widget vote UI dot widget. And so this is mostly here in the case that the player submits their votes, because when they submit their vote, you want to add that to the map. And so here we're going to have a loop. We're going to do voting UI dot candidate selection event dot await. think I just called it selection event. What did I call it? I did call it candidate selection event. Oh, vote. Vote. Sorry, my bad. Vote UI, that candidate selection event. Chosen candidate is equal to that. Then we want to set it in the player map. So if set player choice map at player equal to chosen candidate. And that's just going to set their choice there. We also need an event to handle when they submit. So vote UI.submit button.onClick .await. I need parentheses after the onClick. So basically all that's happening here is if the voting ends, it should stop handling this UI. If they're selecting choices, they need to be added to the map. And if they submit, then we need to just end this race because they've already selected it and we already handled the selection. Then we need to kill the UI and then we need to remove the UI. And that's almost it. We're very close. We need to handle the done of voting event. So signal here, once we're ending the votes. Signal. Actually, we'll do that at the start of the function just so we can have some peace of mind. In fact, we don't even need this this here, considering when you hit the done voting event, it will call these methods, the kill and the removal. So you no longer need this. It's handled by the handle UI function. So done voting is signaled, which will kills handle UI, removes player UI. It'll tally the votes, and it will set the player choice map to nothing, which should clear it for future use. And I think that looks good. I think that is good. Do we even need this player UI map? I don't think we even need the player UI map, because it's already handled by that function. Yeah, we don't even need the map because it's already killed by this function, so we don't even need to store the voting UIs. All right, so there's going to be a case where we need to update the display time of the voting UI. So let's find, where was it? Handle UI. We need to handle duration mode. So it's showing seconds on the UI. So basically, if true duration is equal to duration, honestly, we'll just we'll spawn just so we don't have to worry about crazy if conditions. Spawn handle duration with vote UI, and this will be handle duration up here, where you have your vote UI, type voting UI, suspends, void, and this is just going to be a loop. Start time is going to be get simulation elapsed time. It's going to be a loop. Sleep 1 second. And then if get simulation elapsed time minus start time, we also have to get the duration. So if true duration is duration, then we do this function. So if the time that has passed is, let's start that here. Pastime is equal to this. If pastime is greater than or equal to true duration, then we're done with this. So we'll return. Stop updating. Else, we're going to update our vote UI prompt text block. Set text s2m of vote, and then we'll do true duration. We'll do true duration minus pastime. So it's going to count down. But right now it's set to a float. We want it to be an integer, so it looks nicer. So we'll do seal, the ceiling of that, or -1. -1 meaning that there's an error. So if you see -1 on your UI, that means that there is an error, and that means I failed you. So comment below if I failed you. All right, so handles duration. We also need to handle updating the UI when a player choice has been updated. So we're going to have a player choice changed event, which is an event like so. And we're just going to count the votes based off the active candidates. So inside of our race here, we're going to add a update visual votes. In fact, we'll just make another spawn up here. So spawn handle vote update. That should be fun. Handle vote update with vote UI. And this is the case where you want to display the number of votes. So handle vote update with vote UI, type voting UI. Suspends, void, race, done voting, await. And then we're going to loop and wait for the player choice changed events. And then we need to update our voting UI with the current tallies. So we're going to need some sort of get tally function. Actually, in fact, I think there's a more efficient way to do this rather than generating tallies. So let me utilize that here. So once a candidate is chosen, we want to call the player choice changed events. Changed events dot signal. And now I want to have a handle vote change with no vote UI. So we'll turn void. This is a suspends function. And now we're going to race wait for done voting, and then loop for the player choice change event. We need to get current votes, and we need to set on each UI. So we're going to do for UI in player UI map. And then we're going to have a set function here. So the first thing we do is get the current votes. So we'll have a variable current votes with a candidate enum and an integer. That's going to be a map. And then we're going to do for AC and active candidates. Actually, we can probably avoid that. It's probably fine. For votes, we have to go through the player votes. So player choice map, choice in player choice map. We're gonna need some sort of conversion function from choice to, actually no, I think choice is stored as candidate, so we're good. Yeah, sorry, my confusion. If set cur votes at choice plus equal to 1, and so that will set your cur votes map, and then we're going to pass it into our UI. So UI dot update votes with cur votes. Now go into our UI, and we need a function that matches that name. So update votes with cur votes of type candidate enum int, and that will return void. And we're just going to go through each of these candidate widgets. So for CW and candidate widget, just sorry, I'm sorry I keep moving back and forth. It's been a while since I've done a tutorial. Go back up, and where is it? Where was what I was just working on? Handle vote change. We need to have an if statement here. If show votes is what we called, right? Show vote count. If we want to show vote count, then we're going to call this function. Otherwise, we don't need to bother about this. All right. So go back to here for CW and candidate widgets. CW dot vote button dot set text. We're going to set the text S2M of vote, and then we're going to get the value out of our cur votes. So cur votes at cw.candidate, active candidate, or 0. So there's a chance where there was no votes for this person. We're just going to put 0 there. So either it's going to get it or it's going to set to 0. And in our function here, we're going to slightly change this to where this is at the end, meaning that at the very start of this function is going to go ahead and update all the UIs, and then it's going to call the player choice change event. So handle vote change. We need to call this function at the end of our handle start. Probably after we add the UIs. So spawn handle vote change. And I think that's everything we need from this device. So let's go back to the editor. We're going to hit verse, build verse code. Drag out our voting UI device. Go to details. You'll see this nice panel here where we can add our contents. Add a device. We're going to have trigger. This will be our start trigger. And then the one to the right is going to be an end trigger. So pick that. Pick that. We're going to set our duration. Actually, let me go back to OBS and remove my ugly face so you can actually see what I'm doing. So on the side panel here, you want the triggers initialized. You're going to set a duration for your vote. So I'm going to do 10 seconds. Num to pick. We're going to pick 2. Since I have 3 options, I'm just going to pick 2. We'll use randomize and show vote count so I can see that in action. And then we're going to add our 3 candidates: oranges, coconuts, and bananas. So for oranges, we'll say oranges. Coconuts will say coconuts. Bananas will say bananas. And cocoa. I'll do wall. And we have completed events associated with each of these. So we're going to use another trigger for each of these. And I'm just going to rotate them and have them in order. So oranges, coconuts, and bananas. This will be the orange trigger. This will be the coconut trigger. And this will be the banana trigger. So now that's everything. Let's go test it out and see if I forgot something. All right, it's very common for programmers to make mistakes. And in this case, since the tutorial is very long, I'm just going to show you everything that I got wrong. The first thing I did was I created a refresh function, which basically makes adding and removing UIs from the player UI much faster. That I used, I'm just going to go down the line. So search for error. So that was the first thing I changed. The second thing I changed was in the start voting, I wanted to end any current voting, so I use the done voting signal. So in the case where you hit the trigger multiple times, you're going to want to end any current voting. And it will produce events, so that could be something I fix in a future iteration of this. But I assume you're probably not going to be triggering the vote system multiple times while one's running, of course. The second error I ran into was the slice function. If you look at it in the verse digest, it goes from start index to stop index -1, so you don't have to decrement it yourself. What I had originally was num to pick -1, which should work, but slice already does that for you, so you can just do nothing like that. So I did that to both of these functions. Both of these had -1, but now that fixes. Down here, I added the refresh function when you're adding the UI. So after you add the widget to the player UI, then you want to call the refresh function on the UI widget. So it instantly appears on the screen. One thing we had wrong with the vote change is this map needs to be initialized first. Otherwise, this +=2 does not work unless there's a value there originally. So for all the active candidates, I set cur votes equal to 0, and that fixed that issue. The next error I ran into was refreshing it after the removal. Same kind of deal. And then I also called the kill event of the vote UI. It was originally up here, but for some reason that caused an issue. So I just put it down here, and that fixed my problem. Keep going. I had vertical alignment on the stack box within the voting UI. It should have been horizontal, so I changed it to horizontal. I forgot to spawn the selection event from the voting UI, so I added the spawn down here to call this selection event, and now it updates the color. And finally, down here in the border color block, I decided to add a default desired size. So instead of sizing to the contents of the widget, it sizes to that widget since it's larger than everything else. And that helped. I think this exact numbering helped me, but you might want to change that in your versions. And just as I'm running this, I have the same error where I need to initialize the map first. So we're gonna do for AC and active candidates. Set ballot at AC equal to 0. And that way we have 0 votes there, and that should help with the tie breaking process. So we can just go back, compile, push changes, and finally test after all of these bugs. It's been a lot longer for me than this tutorial. All right. So we can start the game and check out the voting UI. So you can vote for either of these. They'll get highlighted, which one you choose. You can submit, and then I can hit the end voting trigger. And that picked the bananas, of course. And then you can pick between these two. Or you can wait for it to time out, and then once it times out, you should remove this UI and select random either coconuts or oranges, which is one of these two. It picked oranges. So very useful UI, very functional. Everything is working. And you can go back to the editor, of course, and edit all these settings to your liking. And that's it. So if you enjoyed the tutorial, please consider subscribing, leaving a like. Go out and vote. Tomorrow's election day, so go vote, and hope you have a great day. Good luck creating.